Good afternoon, Dr. Andy, and let's get back to our weekly podcast today.
Morning, Ryan, and welcome to all my listeners. So grateful that you're out there. I'm going to be talking today about a very interesting subject to me, because it's one that I think gets overlooked a lot, and I think it is insidious and damaging and a genuine saboteur of love. And it's called withholding, and I'll get into it a little bit more as I talk and help people understand what it is. Honest, open, loving, authentic communication between partners is essential. I've written extensively on communication, on translation, on how people misunderstand each other, how they talk at each other instead of to each other, when they don't listen, when people turn each other away. I've written extensively on it, but nobody would argue that having an open, honest, loving communication, supportive between two people is crucial. I mean, everybody's going to fight at times, but if that basic core relationship exists, you get through your fights and you get more resolution rather than just solution.
Mm-hmm.
And you move on, your relationship gets better. So when people come in to see me, of course, often it's a crisis. There's been an infidelity, or somebody discovers that somebody's been gambling, or somebody has a major health issue. They come in, it's a crisis. And you have to determine for people, is this going to be long-term? Is it a long-term coming? What are the resources of the relationship? Mm-hmm. Most of the people they come in because they're fighting. They're not getting along. The relationship's in trouble. And I see a lot of verbal abuse and invalidation and criticism and degradation, and blaming. I mean, people back and forth at each other, but they're very engaged in the process of doing that. And so they're fighting, and in a way they're fighting for the relationship or fighting to be heard, but there's energy being exchanged between the two people, and energy is crucial. So when I talk about withholding is when energy drops and all of a sudden there's no connection whatsoever. We have research that shows if you're holding a 6-month-old baby and you're talking to them and they're gooing and cooing and talking to you, and you turn away and break eye contact, that baby will start crying within 18 seconds. If you are talking to a child, an older child, and all of a sudden you just get on your phone, that child will start clinging on you, or a pet or an animal. You all of a sudden leave, they'll follow you. Nobody wants a communication broken where there's no access to the other person whatsoever. So withholding can be the most insidious, most damaging behavior to a relationship that exists far beyond everything where people are fighting and there's energy and noise. So let's call it a bid for connection, because John Gottman, all the famous gurus that we know in the world, they talk about the importance of responding to a bid for connection of any kind. A child says, Daddy, 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 I'm busy, Daddy. You finally look at them and they say, what is it? They can't even tell you, because all they wanted was for you to connect, not attention, connect, make sure that I'm there, that you see me, that you know me, and that I exist in the world on the other end of you. So if you understand that the thing people fear greater than anything in the world, all human beings, is isolation, abandonment, rejection, exile. That's in the human spirit. And people fear those experiences more than any experiences in the world. Some people have personality disorders, like a borderline personality, and those experiences are much more exaggerated, but all of us fear to be alone, to be rejected, to be exiled, no longer necessary or needed, to no longer matter. So when you talk about the most harmful behavior, activate that in your partner. Just disconnect from them. And the other person is helpless. They don't know what to do. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you're feeling. They don't know what the outcome is going to have. And if they've had trauma as a child, abandonment trauma or exiling trauma, or children that go from home to home in foster homes, it activates literally sheer terror. Now, we're going to talk more about how this happens in relationships, but I want people to understand that though it happens most often in fights, there are many relationships I've been with when the person who has the most power, which is defined as the person who needs the relationship the least, the person who has the most power pulls away as a regular basis. We need to talk about something. I need to tell you something that's going on. I'm busy. Or the person says, look, I'm unhappy. Too bad. And they disconnect. They walk away, or they just shut the person down. You'll see those behaviors throughout the entire relationship. I'll talk to you later. Later never comes. Let's make a plan. Sure, but not now. But or a child comes to you. I need help with my homework. Well, eat dinner first. It's a bid for connection. You don't say that. You say, well, what do you need? And if you respond rapidly to a bid for connection, whatever it is, you don't have to agree or disagree, but you don't erase that person's experience. You don't exist. You're not important enough to me to exist for me at this moment in time. So again, since most of these behaviors happen during fights, we often see, it's happening all the time. So the fight just makes it worse. Okay, why do people withhold? Well, obviously they've seen it in childhood. It's been modeled for them. They've seen the more powerful parent use that to control the other parent. Often, maybe they have had it happen directly to them and they're terrified of it. They need something, they need connection, they need closeness, and somebody shuts them off or shuts them down. It begins early in childhood. And of course, children who are more sensitive to rejection, some kids just, it just runs off their back. But there are kids who, if you don't listen right away, they will literally have they'll fall apart. They'll have a tantrum. They just fall on the floor. They're so alone, so rapidly and so quickly and so frightened that they flail out in almost a premature, prehistoric, baby-like way, the way they would have when they were little, in that sense. So people withhold because they've been taught to withhold. They've been withhold because they've observed people withholding. They've been taught because they've seen how effective it is to completely and totally disrupt the power in the other person. 100% that person is powerless. If they need that connection, they have no power to attain it in any way because the other person has shut it down. So there's essentially two types of withholding, two types I never like. Because usually there's multiple versions and all kinds of intersect. But just for simplicity, there's two kinds. There's the person who deliberately withholds. It's intentional. They cut off all communication as a punishment for something they think the other person did wrong. And so they just say, you're not worth talking to. You're not worth being with. They generally don't leave the room. Sometimes they'll walk out and slam the door, but they'll usually sit there with their arms crossed, looking sort of triumphant and angry, face looking directly at you like, I'm going to make you feel terrible for what you've done because you are not going to be able to get to me. I'm going to be 100% unable to be reached, and you will not have any power to change that. They want the other person to feel abandoned. They want to get back at them. Their goal is to disempower. They want that other person to come groveling back to them. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I wouldn't do that again. Whatever it's all about. That's what they want. And they're feeling justified when they're doing that. It sounds evil. It sounds mean. But when you talk to people who withhold intentionally, they'll say, it's the only way I could ever get her or him to shut up. What else was I supposed to do? Oh, da, 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 da. They have their rationalizations. They don't. But the actual behavior as you observe it, especially, oh my God, when you see it with a child. I mean, 1,000 years ago, I was at a party and this 2.5-year-old was jumping off a bed into his father's arms, maybe 7 times. And then he jumped and the father backed away and let him fall. And he said to him, the world won't always catch you. And he walked away. That child's face was destroyed. When do I do that? Well, of course, if that father came back and wanted to play with him again, he would do that 100 more times before he would be permanently damaged. When do you trust somebody's going to be there? And when do you not trust? It erodes the trust that that person's going to be there. So when people are actually in the process of active withholding, intentional, they want to hurt that other person. They are getting back at them or something. And obviously the person on the other end starts begging and starts pleading and starts wanting more and more and more and more. But once they've taken that stand, they can't cut back down, because often what's inside of them, whether they've been the victim of withholding or they've observed it, as I said, growing up, if they back down, they become powerless and they give power to the other person. So once they're there, they're not going to do that. And when you watch that happen, when I watch it particularly with a parent and a child, it makes me want to cry. But I've also watched it in relationships where a person just puts their arms crossed, looks at a person and said, guess what? You don't matter. You don't count at all. Then there's something called reactive withholding. It's a little bit different. The people who have endured attacks and invalidations and criticisms or abuse as children, the only way they know how to survive is to put a wall around them. They pull in and they put up a wall and they stop talking. They become immobilized because they perceive the other person as a predator, and then you only have a fight, flight, or flee response. So they take the response of immobilization. They just shut down, and the shutting down process is in hopes that the other person will stop doing whatever they're doing, but they're not trying to hurt. They don't see that other person as a person they're wanting to punish. They see that other person as a person they want to not be punished by. So it's much more of a self-protective mechanism, but the effect on the other person is the same. Sadly, it generally tends to generate in that person on the other end of them, pushing them harder. You know, why are you closing off from me? Why are you doing that? That's not fair. You can't do that. But that person is literally unable to put that wall down because it's activating trauma. And all they know to do at that point is to survive. I have to create myself as erased and non-existing. You know, there was no way to fight back when they were a child. And when there's trauma, it can just take just a vocal intonation, an expression on the other person's face, some kind of threat, a phrase, and that person, they're gone. They are absolutely curled up in a ball. And I've actually seen people in my office where the person will really curl up almost in a fetal position. And here, they almost leave their bodies so that the other person can damage them as much as possible, but they won't feel it, and they don't come back till later. This is the saddest part of withholding. It's one of the hardest things to change in therapy. The patterns are extremely deeply set. They've allowed people to survive. They've kept people from feeling powerless. They've given people a way to get back at somebody or to survive. And you will often be attracted to people who play out this pattern, where one piece is a withholder and one piece is a please connect, please connect, please connect. I'll do anything, please connect. And the other person saying, well, I don't know whether you'll measure up or not. I may or may not be there for you. So when I start to work with people that are in these withholding behavior patterns, it is not easy to change them. People are frightened underneath. They have not shared their fears with each other. They've not shared the trauma with each other that's created those kinds of behaviors. Sometimes it's the only power they think they have in a relationship. So when you try to get people to stop the withholding, whether it's intentional or whether it's reactive, it is not a 6-week therapy process. It's a long, involved process where I have to have two partners who both want to stop that insidious pattern and to be with each other and to learn that the price of intimacy is worth giving up power. You have to make that commitment to me. Look, you're never going to know love. You're going to never know what it feels like to matter. You're going to never know what it feels like to work through something. I know you're terrified. I know you're scared. But you know something? That's the price of intimacy. And you have been horrendously taught to do something which is going to deny that experience to you for the rest of your life. So when I can get people to work, the good news is I can get them to change. But it's not easy. And one of the biggest problems is when a person starts to not withhold, it's very important that the other partner doesn't say, well, it's about time you opened up and started talking. I mean, you can't come back punishing for the process that's been going along the whole time. You have to have two people who are willing to be so vulnerable, to make room for that vulnerability, and to absolutely accept that the hunger for true intimacy must win over the resistance and the fear of the pain and the vulnerability. So the bad news is it's hard to change, and it exists in a lot of relationships. The good news is that it's possible to change. I have to have two people who are so lonely for each other that they don't play out those patterns anymore.
Right. That's interesting. And this is for people that, I mean, it's just all walks of life, right? I mean, this
1000%.
um now the people that seek your service with this type of topic, what is a typical like
Uh,
couple?
Anybody is welcome to write directly to me at randygunther@cox.net. Randy Gunther, all one word, Randy with an I. They can read all the 265 articles I've written for Psychology Today. I've put them on one site called relationshipsactually.org. Absolutely welcome to do that. They can look on my website, and also I'm pretty much all over Google. So if you just Google my name, you can find some of these podcasts, you can find some of the other articles I've written, and I welcome the critique, I welcome the interest. Not only that, I would love to be, absolutely available on a one-on-one in the sense that you can tell me what you'd like me to talk about. I've been doing this for almost a half century, and there's not much I haven't seen. And mostly I feel just deeply compassionate and supportive.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, they know the work and they know where you can be reached, and we'll publish this, and then hopefully we'll get this into other social media settings, so we can reach more people. So we look forward in your next podcast, Dr. Andy. This is great.
See you in a week and we'll do something else. It'll be fun.
Right. And then this can be found also at Psychology Today sometime this week, right?
Yes.
Great. We'll link that information on our website, our social media, and YouTube channel. Have a great day.
Same to you.